It's like Accenture. They do a ton of advertising. Do you really think they're generating majority of their revenue from having their logo plastered on the FedEx Cup golf tournament? No.
No, definitely not. So we got to kind of go through the parts here. So 2001 to now, obviously a lot has happened as far as you being an entrepreneur and business. So what are some of the cliff notes here, some of the parts of that journey that are most important?
I learned a few big valuable lessons. One, don't try to take shortcuts. I used to try to use like black hat techniques to try to get rankings really fast and just climb my way to the top. Not the best approach, not smart. Eventually you get whacked, and you should take the long-term approach, because if I took the long-term approach from day one, I would have had a much bigger business. The second thing I learned is, and this one it took me a long time to learn, brands are super important. You know, if you look at the most popular search queries on Google, majority of them are brands. Great product, great service does amazing to your marketing, and you can't take it for granted. The third thing that I really learned, and this one was the toughest one that took me time to really focus and practice, was focus. You do too many things too soon, nothing's really going to end up happening.
Okay, so what was the? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
And once I started focusing on my business career, my marketing career, focusing on what matters, not chasing the newest thing, things started to grow and become much better for me.
Right. So what was the first brand that really took off for you?
Crazy Egg. And well, probably not first real brand. Our first company that really took off was an ad agency called ACS back in the day. We no longer own it. That started taking off, and that did well. And we got that business to a few million in revenue really quickly. Didn't know how to scale it to 10, 20 million or anything like that. The next business that did decently well for us was a brand called Crazy Egg. We still have it today. And over time, just being in a market for 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years, your brand really builds up. People keep using your product or service. It adds up. The next one that did all right was Kiss Metrics. That one failed due to FTC investigations, class action lawsuit over data privacy. We didn't really do anything, not even really. We did not do anything on data privacy or, sell data or anything like that. But we used this cookie approach that helped reduce our server expenses by like 30%. And people frowned upon it. And once we found out that you're not supposed to end up doing it, we stopped. But what we had the class action mainly for wasn't just a cookie, but they said if we had Macy's as a client, hypothetically, we were selling the data to Nordstrom's. And with the FTC investigation, the government found that we weren't doing anything wrong, so we passed with flying colors. And then I learned if you're in a lawsuit, whether you're doing something right or wrong, you still got to pay quote unquote legal fees. It's not the government's actually easier to deal with. And believe it or not, it was actually cheaper to settle than it was to spend the legal fees. And they knew that because we had insurance. So they're like, look, I remember the lawyers calling us like, look, you spend some money, your insurance will spend the rest. Settle. It'll be cheaper and easier. And I was like, why would I settle? I'm actually right. And then I quickly realized you want to spend $500,000 to $1 million battling it out, or 50 grand of your own money and 500 grand of the insurance company's money. Basic math, right? You spend the 50 grand and settle. At least 50 grand for that came from our pocket. And then the latest brand is, and this is my full focus, is called ad agency called NP Digital. We're 700, 800 employees. We're global. And the business is going well, as good as it could be in this market when people like cutting marketing budgets.
Yeah, we can definitely get into that. Yeah. So the first ad agency you had, how similar is it to what you're doing at Neil Patel Digital today?
Very similar. We're just doing it better and at scale. Okay. It was small, right? A few million in revenue versus a 9-figure revenue company. There's a big difference.
Okay. Yeah. So this goes down to focus. So I'm assuming, your focus right now is on NP Digital, and you probably don't have a lot of other side projects. You're not selling courses. You're not doing masterminds. You're just purely focused in on this right now.
It's like focus on selling courses, or just sell one contract for $5 million a year, or $6 or $10 million a year, right? I'll take the bigger contract.
Yeah. Well, let's talk logistically about how you would execute that big of a contract. What size team is required? What systems are required to be able to do that? I mean, that's a pretty big undertaking.
It's just skill. Typically, bigger contracts just usually mean either more divisions of a corporation or more regions of a corporation. So think of what you would do on a smaller contract for 100 grand, 200 grand, 500 grand a year, and you just add. You don't have to add tons more account managers, but you're going to have to add more SEO people, more pay-per-click people, more email marketing people, more conversion optimization, whatever you're selling them on. Typically, it's when you're getting the bigger contracts, you're selling a little bit of everything or quite a bit of everything, and your goal is to just deliver on it.
So,
but the bigger part is not actually how to scale up to that from an operational standpoint. It's just more people. The harder part is how do you get them? And typically, a lot of those kind of contracts are built from reputation and relationships. So if you look at a lot of our executive team, they were C-levels or presidents or executives at larger corporations in our space. So we hire a lot of people who are executives from Dentsu, WPP, Omnicom, right? We're taking people from the holding companies because not only do they have the experience managing, dealing with those clients, scaling out the businesses on a global scale, they also have the relationships, which helps you get more RFPs in business.
Interesting. Yeah. So you're not going to be able to get these types of big fish by just getting some little lead generation side or some traditional inbound technique that we would use would not work.
All right. So check this out. I haven't checked my analytics in months. All right. Seriously, for neilpatel.com. I get millions of visitors, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. For enterprise contracts, can you guess how many of them come from the website?
I would guess virtually none.
Close. A little bit more than 77% come from referrals, RFPs, or employees.
Yeah,
and it's going down each and every year, right? So that 77 will probably eventually become 90-something%.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm assuming the journey for them to eventually become that type of lead is very long. Because they probably maybe watch something from you, then they talk to someone who knows you, and it's this big, long business development process that it's a very long journey.
Yeah, but even if it's not a long journey, people don't sign the large contracts usually without going through RFP processes or procurements. There's systems and procedures in places for companies to sign big contracts. 100 grand contract, no problem. You can generate a ton of them from inbound. You want 5, 10, $20 million contracts. It's much, much harder to generate them from inbound marketing or even paid advertising. It's like Accenture. They do a ton of advertising. Do you really think they're generating majority of their revenue from having their logo plastered on the FedEx Cup golf tournament? No.
No, definitely not. So what is let's just take an example client of that size. Like, what is the sales cycle? How long does that sales cycle look from beginning to end?
Quick end, if you're lucky, 3 months. Bless you. Bless you. A long end, 6 months to a year.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah.
3 months is really short. Realistically, most of them are 6 months to a year.
Yeah. And so let's go on the low end of 3 months. Like, how many touch points are we talking to get to a closed deal?
I don't know. And here's why I say I don't know. It's not that I'm not involved in the process. It's because there's so many people involved in the process. You're pulling people from different departments to help you with pitches and phone calls and follow-ups. And then you're dealing with not just 1 or 2 people on the other end. You may be dealing with, 6, 7, 10 people in marketing. And then they bring in people from different countries or regions or different divisions. Then they bring in procurement. So there's a lot of different people that you're talking to, a lot of different touch points. And a lot of times, not everyone is on the call at the same time.
Interesting. So I would assume that
you're not talking about like 5 or 10 touch points, right? It's substantially more.
Yeah. It's a lot.
And you're putting in a lot of money to try to close a deal too. It's not like, oh, you put in $5,000 worth of hours to close a deal. Like some of these deals, you're putting in 100 plus $200,000-$300,000 worth of hours to try to close a deal. Some of the really big ones.
Yeah. And I'm assuming just to be able to even develop the type of proposal that you would need to even win a deal like that, it's going to be some sort of custom build. It's going to be pretty intense.
Everything is.
Yeah.
It is. Analyzing a lot of numbers and data rooms and all that kind of stuff. And you may not be paying money to try to close and win those deals, but you're paying for a lot of people's time and they're spending that time on closing a deal. So if you don't close it, They just spend all these hours on something that produced no revenue. That's
Yeah.
how you get to the expensive number.
So is your sales division separate from your account managers, or are those blended together?
Separate.
Okay.
We keep it all separate, but account managers also have a book of business and they got to upsell.
Okay.
Sales focus on new business, account managers focus on existing business. Sales sometimes gets involved in existing business, but rarely. And funny enough, a lot of our sales reps were previous account managers. So they're experts themselves when it comes to whatever they're selling. So like, let's say we're selling, I'm making this up, Ford on a whole digital performance marketing suite, SEO, pay-per-click, social media, organic and paid, email marketing, conversion rate optimization, data analytics. The list goes on and on, right? Our sales guys aren't a salesperson. They're more so industry experts that we have them handle sales. They started their career doing the actual work, maybe then eventually going to account management, and then we try to bring them over into sales.
Interesting. So, because it's probably better for them to have the nuanced understanding of these technical skills, which then makes it easier for them to be able to actually hold their weight if a client has technical questions.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now, let me ask you, because you probably have a lot of experience with this. So, I learned a while ago that there's a big difference between people that have hard skills and people who have soft skills. And something I learned when working with clients was it's not a great idea to use someone as operating from the soft skills and the hard skills and having one person try to do both of those things. So like, for example, having an SEO also be an account manager. I realized that kind of needed to be divided out. So can you explain why that is and why you need to have that separated out?
Sure. So SEO may be attention to detail, really good at optimizing code, but they may struggle with client communication, reporting, building up rapport. Well, account manager may not be in the weeds as much, but they may be amazing at maintaining the relationship, creating reporting, communicating with them, figuring out overall strategy beyond just SEO and where the business needs to go, and understanding business sense versus just quote unquote SEO or marketing, and understanding the roadmap that the company needs to take in order to achieve their goals, right? So you need different people in different roles, because without that, you're not going to give a customer what they really want. It's hard to do that with smaller accounts, like someone paying you $3,000 a month. It's much easier when someone's paying you $1 million a year, or 5 million, or whatever the number is.
Right. Yeah. So do you think that account managers, like the skills, the soft skills that are required to be a good account manager, do you think that can be trained, or you think that's pretty inherent in certain people?
It can potentially be trained. That I don't know if it can or can't. We found that when we hire, most of them were naturally that way, and it's their personality type.
Yeah. That's definitely seen the same thing. Okay. So let's kind of shift gears. So I want to talk more about let's call it your marketing strategy that you use personally. And I know most of your business does come from more traditional means like we discussed, but you do produce a lot of content, so we need to talk about that, right? So let's talk about. I want to know, what systems do you have in place to produce that level of content on a quantity and even a quality basis? Obviously, you must have really good infrastructure to be able to do that.
Not as much as you think. So there's Pascali, who films my content for my long form. There's AJ, who films my short form. There's Salo, and some of the team help come up with ideas, and that's really it. We have Salo manages a contractor who comes out with my YouTube outlines. My YouTube outlines are title of idea. He'll type out an intro, and he'll create like 6 points with some stats, and that's it. I gotta literally freestyle it and pretty much create a video. Same with my social media content. They just tell me a topic and I just riff. And then the team worries about posting it, optimizing it, all that kind of stuff. As for SEO, blog content, text-based content, I write a post roughly once a week, post it on a Tuesday. I have a team that goes and updates all my old content. We spend way more time updating old content than writing new content.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So you're pretty much hyper focused on just the actual creation, then you're handing it off to your team to tackle all that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. All right. Now let's talk about a couple quick things here, which obviously in the SEO industry, it's going to be people are going to know about this a lot more than others. But so you acquired Ubersuggest, and then you recently acquired Answer the Public. Okay, so
Uh-huh.
let's start with Ubersuggest. How much has that benefited the brand? How is that side of the business doing on the software side?
So it's hard to put it one to one, but roughly 40% of our agency customers use Ubersuggest. So do they find us and then use Ubersuggest, or they use Ubersuggest and then they find us? It's probably a mixture of both, but it's actually drove quite a bit of revenue from that aspect.
Was that the
Answer the public,
intentional?
we're hoping
Yeah. Go ahead.
it wasn't intentional at the beginning, but that's why
Okay.
we bought Answer the Public to replicate the same thing.
Okay.
Has it happened yet with Answer the Public? No. Will we hope it happens within the next year or two? Yes. But is it guaranteed? No. So it's an $8.6 million bet.
It's a pretty big bet.
Time will tell.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because it's probably hard to quantify in the short term. You're going to need a lot of time to be able to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, we also overpaid for it, right? So it wasn't doing more than 1.2 million a year when we bought it.
Mm.
So it's not like we got a great deal when we bought it, but more so, we believed that we can generate way more revenue from consulting than we can from software.
Interesting.
Now, do we
Okay.
think we can get it into more EBITDA? Yeah, we think it was mismanaged. No one was focused on it. It should be at least 3-4 times bigger in EBITDA than it is. And that we'll work on fixing in the next year. And we'll see if we get it there. But the bigger thing is we weren't really worried about the EBITDA or the revenue. We were more so focusing on the consulting end. Because when we were looking at the users that use it, it's a lot of big companies, yet they don't close any revenue from those big companies.
Mm. So untapped potential then that you're trying to get into.
Bingo, that's why we bought it.
Yeah. Very interesting.
We didn't buy it for a SaaS play, to be super specific.
Yeah, you weren't just trying to get
improve
another
the
revenue
product.
stream.
Yeah, we weren't trying to get another SaaS revenue stream. We were more so looking for something to help feed the agency more on a global basis. And when we look at Answer the Public, we'll run a similar playbook to Ubersuggest. Like, we start improving the design. We'll start playing with pricing in the next week or two. We'll start giving people search volume and CPC data for all the terms. We'll make it where they can click a button eventually and automatically generate content using like GPT, any one of those software solutions, so that way people can have a blog post started for them. So we'll start doing all those kind of things to make the product better. We're also starting to store search data. Not that it's Nathan searching, but just search data. Here's what the term marketing looked like 6 months ago, and here's what terms were popular. So you can compare over time and see what terms are becoming more popular, less popular, etc., and trending and all that kind of stuff.
Very nice. Very nice. So when you do this acquisition, are you inheriting the existing team from that tool, or are you starting from scratch?
No team. That was the biggest problem with it. They didn't
Okay.
focus on it. They're like, oh, it does like 100+ grand a month in profit. I'm like, it doesn't really do 100 grand a month in profit. You have no one on that company. So if you actually
Mm,
had to add people, which you usually do because there's support requests, etc., the profit goes way down. That's why I said we really overpaid for it. We paid at least 8
interesting.
times multiple on a company that churns quite a bit of EBITDA.
And right. Yeah. Well, that's so what would be
At
the
least.
reason to pay? Yeah, I mean, you must really see potential then to pay a premium like that. You must really see some long-term potential.
As I mentioned, Ubersuggest generates 40% of our clients that pay us 40% use Ubersuggest. We're a 9-figure revenue company. You can do the math on how much consulting revenue that it can potentially drive. Answer the Public had 70% of the traffic as Ubersuggest. It was just a
Mm,
math equation.
yeah. Very interesting.